Welcome back, everyone. It's here. And today I've got some r/BestOf for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the posts, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. This post was collected by Similar Shame 7517. And their tagline is, "Try and fire me for having too much dick." I'll try and hunt down that origin sometime. The original OP is Zesty Close Charge 281 posted to r/TrueOffMyChest and their personal page. Originally posted June 9th, 2024, with the final update being September 16th, 2025. Grandpa is punishing my dad. I have the power to stop it, but don't know if I actually want to. I'm using a throwaway because if any of my friends or family see this, I don't want them to know my main account since I have some very private things on there. I, female 21, lost my mom when I was 14. Dad remarried when I was 17. My stepmom has a daughter, female 15. She and dad had a boy, male 3. And now she just gave birth to a little girl. Anyway, I've worked since I was 16 to have some money to buy stuff for me. When I turned 18, Dad said I was now an adult and should start paying rent. It was only $500, a symbolic amount since he would still cover food and other essentials. I was mad and we fought, but in the end I accepted, and that was the arrangement until 7 months ago. Dad came to me saying I had 2 months to move out. Stepmom was pregnant and they would need my room for the baby, which is insane because they both have private offices. My stepmom doesn't even need one since she's a stay-at-home mom since the birth of my baby brother. Nonetheless, they told me I had to move. By the way, just as an addendum, me and my stepmom get well fine. We don't fight or bicker. I don't think this was an evil stepmom moment. But who knows? Me and stepsister are actually pretty close. I help her with homework and talk about her personal problems. I do love her very much. Back to the story. I don't know what to do. I'm going to a college, I want to be a civil engineer, and work part-time. I don't have the means to live by myself. I called my aunt, asking if I could move in with her for the time being until I figured something out. Offered to pay rent and all. She was aghast at what my dad was doing. She said I absolutely could live with her. No rent needed. But also said she was gonna deal with my dad. The next day, Grandpa came to our house, and they talked privately. I could hear my dad's angry voice, but couldn't understand anything being said. After a while, Grandpa came to my room and said I had 3 choices. The first was continue living with Dad and stepmom like I was doing. Nothing would change except without paying rent. The second was moving in with him and Grandma, or my aunt. Third was find a place of my own and he would pay the rent and costs for me. He said I didn't need to choose now, I could keep living with my dad, and if I changed my mind, to just tell him. I was actually relieved I could still live with Dad, and that this madness was over. But the following days and weeks, Dad and stepmom were very hostile towards me, and I felt incredibly uncomfortable being in my own home. Even Cassie picked this up and asked why they were angry at me. So, I decided to move out and told Grandpa. He said he would take care of everything. Few weeks later, he moved me in one of his rental units. The apartment is lovely. He bought me a fridge, stove, and other essential items. He gave me a check for $15,000, saying this money is to help me start living on my own, and that as long as I am working or studying, I can live there rent-free, for as long as I want. My dad and I have been pretty low contact since I moved out. He never came to visit me, or I visit them. I missed them a lot, especially my stepsister, but I'm still hurt. 2 weeks ago, my stepmom gave birth. I visited them in the hospital. It was a little awkward, but nice seeing them and my baby sister. Anyway, a few days ago, Dad calls me, saying he misses me, the children misses me, and I should move back home. He apologized for asking me to move out, etc., etc., etc. And I told him I would think about it. Yesterday, I visited my aunt and was telling her what my dad said, and my cousin laughed a little and said, "I'm sure he does." I asked what he meant, and that's when they told me a lot of, until now, unknown information. Basically, my dad's home is actually my grandpa's, as is my aunt's. Basically, the deal he made with me, he did with all his kids and some grandkids as well. He never wanted any of his family to have to worry about basic stuff like house and food, etc. When I called my aunt that time, she called Grandpa, which was furious with Dad, not only for kicking me out, but also for charging me rent. That day, he went to my dad's and tore him a new one and threatened to have him evicted. But now, the petty part. You know that 15 Grandpa gave me? It's actually what I paid Dad in rent all that time. And now he's making Dad pay him back. Also, he's charging Dad $1,200 for the rent loss in the apartment I'm living in. Call me dumb or naive, but until now, I never realized my dad didn't make that much money. We lived in a great house, always went on vacations, and lived very comfortable lives. But I guess Grandpa has always been helping behind the scenes. Now, my cousin thinks Dad is struggling with 3 kids at home, a single income, and having to pay it back to Grandpa. So he says Dad wants me back because he imagines Grandpa will stop punishing him if I'm living with them. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I'm actually loving living on my own these past 6 months. But I do really miss them. I miss my siblings. I miss the life we had before all of this. But I don't know if moving back home is the right answer. And also, I'm hurt the reason he wants me back is money. Honestly, I just wanted to vent. So before we start crawling into the updates, I want to share some of my own personal theories here because I'm a yapper by trade. And you guys signed up for that. My personal pet theory right now, which I'll be curious to see if this is validated or confirmed in any way, is the father lied about his financial position to his current wife, or OP's stepmom. He's claiming that all the money they're earning is actually from him and what he does for a living, completely admitting the fact that his father actually, by the sounds of it, kinda bankrolled a lot of their lifestyle, giving them the largest golden parachute that you could possibly ask for. So the stepmother, not being aware of the golden parachute, or probably the terms and conditions of said golden parachute, recommends that they start charging the newly found adult in the household rent each month to help alleviate any financial stress there might be. Which I'm only assuming there's financial stress because it's somewhat hinted at by OP and some of the conversations there. And I also get the impression that the stepmother is now fully aware of the golden parachute. I'm crossing my fingers that OP doesn't move back in, but overall, it's pretty fucked up and telling that despite having that massive golden parachute and despite knowing that OP's father's father or her grandfather is providing that kind of care to his children and grandchildren, and he opted to go right for charging her rent, speaks volumes of his character. Now on to the top and relevant comments. User not the lizard genitals comments. I'm so sorry that your father has hurt you so much. He doesn't want you though. He wants money, and knowing this is always going to hurt you and chip away at your self-worth. I know it hurts, but going back is not healthy for you. You deserve people in your life who love you unconditionally and want to spend time with you because it's you, and without ulterior motives. How about starting new traditions with your aunt and grandparents? They love you and want you around. I wish you all the best. Opie responds, quote, he doesn't want you though, he wants the money, and knowing this is always going to hurt you and chip away at your self-worth. This is the weird part because I know this, but also it's difficult to see my dad that way. These past 6 months, I wondered why kick me out if I had done something. Now I'm thinking, was it all about money? Quote, how about starting new traditions with your aunt and grandparents? They love you and want you around. End quote. Yeah, they've been great. I visit them whenever possible. Grandma isn't in the best of health, but she even came to visit me on my birthday. I'm very lucky to have them and their support. And thanks for the kind words. OP's comments. OP in response to a comment asking for more info about the financial arrangements. Cause you said your dad didn't contact you at all since moving out. No, I said we were low contact. He and stepmom wished me happy birthday and bought me a book as a gift. I invited them over, but they didn't come. I also never visited them or was even invited. Quote, you said he made you pay $500 for rent right after you turned 18, and now you're 21. Assuming you paid him rent in your 18th, 19th, and 20th year, that's 12 months times 3 years equals 36 months times 500 rent is $18,000. Now, your grandfather took money from your dad and gave you a check for $15K? Does this mean that your dad owes you more money? He didn't start with the rent the second I turned 18. Nonetheless, I hadn't actually made the math. Regardless, Grandpa had bought a lot of things for the apartment, so I don't know if he took that into consideration or not. But the reality is, I don't care if my dad owes me anything or not. I'm grateful to Grandpa to have a place to live, and with that money, have some savings. Quote, but your dad, understandably, and stepmother were hostile to you, and you decided to move out. If you had a good relationship with her previously, why was she hostile to you, assuming your grandfather only scolded dad? I don't know what was said or done that day. I thought the situation would go back to normal, but it became weird. They never shouted or were aggressive with me. It was more like I didn't exist. They only acknowledged me when they demanded I do chores, which I always did, so I don't know why they were acting like I was spoiled or something. I felt unwelcomed, so I decided to take Grandpa's offer and move. OP, in response to a comment telling them that even under the new arrangement, OP's dad is still saving a lot of money on rent or mortgage, and thus OP shouldn't feel guilty. Quote, also, I have a feeling your grandfather would be unconvinced to change the rent your father is paying even if you were to move back. He's charging your father to make a point, not to actually cover your expenses. End quote. It makes sense. I've been reading what people say, and I'm more comfortable with staying where I am, less guilty. But maybe I should talk with Grandpa about it, to hear his side. I now realize I've been too sheltered from information I think I need. OP, in response to a comment advising them that instead of moving back home, to instead schedule regular plans with the family and sleepovers with stepsister. Those are great suggestions, thank you. I'll tell Dad I won't be moving back, but I'll suggest ways to reconnect. I would love to have sleepovers with my siblings. I'll put that as the main one. People are being so helpful, and I'm realizing I can have a relationship with them on my own terms. I feel kinda dumb, because it's obvious. Thank you again. Redditor 1. Yeah, I was really worried when I read Dad had a child with stepmom's kid. I believe you're studying engineering, LOL. Best of luck. OP responds, oh my god, is that how that read? Oh god, no. Dad and stepmom had my baby brother, and now stepmom gave birth to my sister. I'm dyslexic and made abundant use of autocorrect. Sorry about grammar. Update 1, posted 9 days later. I wanted to give you guys an update since you've all been so helpful and kind to me. I was overwhelmed by the support you gave me. Thanks 1,000 times. Before just answering some questions people had, my aunt and grandpa are from my father's side of the family. My mom's side, unfortunately, I don't have much contact. My grandparents have passed away before Mom. I have uncles and aunts I see once in a while, but they don't live close. I also have 2 other uncles from my father's side. I'm close to them, but not as near my aunt. She was my rock when my mom died. I consider her a second mom. My stepmom knew about the rent I was paying. It was implied stepsister would need to do the same when she turned 18, but I don't know if she knew Dad didn't own the house, or the extent of how much Grandpa has financially helped Dad. Ooh, my theory is feeling more and more likely. To the update. Monday, the day after my post, I called my dad and said I decided to not move back. I didn't mention anything I was told, just what was well settled here. And moving back seemed like a step back, but I also said I wanted to keep in contact with them. They could invite me for dinner whenever they wanted, and I also said I would love for my stepsister and brother to be able to spend time with me here at home. He was disappointed, and I didn't feel any angriness in his tone at least, but he basically said, we'll see, and left at that. I was so disappointed. But then Friday he called me, asked me if I wanted to have lunch Sunday, today. I said I already had plans with Grandma and Grandpa. He asked when I would be free. So we scheduled a dinner for Thursday. I haven't told any of this to my stepsister. We talk and text regularly. She also hasn't heard them talking about me, but she did say her grandma, her mom's mom, is there to help with the baby and is being incredibly annoying. I laughed at that. I wanted to offer her to sleep over here, but didn't want to get her excited just for Dad to say no. So I'll try to talk with them Thursday. The big update is I've just came back from visiting Grandma and Grandpa. We spent a lovely day together, but I also said I wanted to know everything that was going on. I wasn't a kid anymore, and I felt like living in lies. The most important things were things my cousin and aunt told me last week. But there were a few more. Grandpa had been subsidizing quite often our basic needs, like school, healthcare, etc. Because Dad hasn't 1 cent saved up according to Grandpa. Also, my college fund was mainly contributed by him and Mom before her passing. I guess that makes sense. I was also dumb to not realize this sooner. He also has funds set up for my baby siblings, and also one for my stepsister, because he didn't want her to feel excluded and not have the same opportunities as her siblings. This man is incredible. I love him so much, and yes, I'm very, very lucky. I've seen so many people commenting this, not in a derogatory way, but being very supportive and nice. I know I'm very privileged to have grandparents and family members who can afford and are willing to help me. I hope one day I can help others the way they are helping me. Anyways, I also expressed worries about Dad's financial situation, and he assured me, Dad is fine. More than fine. He will have to be less frivolous with money for a while, but that he would never let any of his kids or grandkids suffer or be in the need for anything. As many of you said, he's trying to teach Dad a lesson. Quote, I should have taught him a long time ago. End quote. So, I'll stay out of it. I don't think I'll tell Dad that I know all of this. I know many of you said to confront him, but I think it's for the best if he continues thinking I'm oblivious. Lastly, we talked about why Dad kicked me out. He didn't have an answer either. I could see he and Grandma were very hurt by what he did. He said he asked for an explanation, but got none. That's it for now. I'll continue trying to have a relationship with my siblings outside of my dad and stepmom. I'll also try to schedule some weekly dinner with them. I know what you guys said about my father is mostly true, but I need to at least try to have a relationship with him. If not for him, for my siblings and for me. But don't worry, I won't let them hurt me anymore. So, butting back in here, the more that OP updates, the more that I do get the impression that the stepmother 100% has something to do with this, and the father played along, thinking that this would just get swept under the rug and they would be none the wiser, and the lid got blown off. And because technically the daughter is the reason why the golden parachute was revealed, and now they realize the threat they have of their finances being less frivolous, essentially somewhat blamed the daughter. Because now, instead of getting $500 from her for her rent, they're now paying money and losing money, because Grandpa, who is funding their lifestyle, called them out on their bullshit. Anyways, update 2, small update. Posted 9 days later. Grandpa is punishing my dad, dinner went well, spent the weekend with sister, but no new info. There isn't much of an update, but some people messaged me asking about how was the dinner. So last Thursday, I went there after work, and gosh, I missed my siblings so much, and I spent a majority of the time with them. My baby brother is not a baby anymore, and he's grown so much. My baby sister is so cute I could eat her alive. I never want to be apart from them anymore. Doesn't matter what happens. KEYZ, I said her name once in my original post by mistake, she's my stepsister, is the only one I maintained regular contact through calls and text. She's just an amazing person as well. She knows I didn't move out in the best of circumstances, but doesn't know the details or anything about the money. I asked if she wanted to have a sleepover at my house sometimes, and she was thrilled. If I hadn't stopped her, she would have started packing at that second. My stepmom's mom was still there to help with the baby, and guess where she's staying? In my old bedroom. They transformed it into a guest room, and the baby room was stepmom's old office because it's closer to the master. Honestly, that hurt a little. I've only met my stepmom's parents a few times. They were always nice to me. This time, she kept looking at me weird all the time. Didn't matter where I was or where I moved. She was keeping track of me, like she was expecting me to try and steal something. When I was holding the baby, she didn't leave my side. Anyway, apart from that, dinner went as well as you can imagine. A little awkward, but I was glad I could see my siblings and spend a few hours playing with them. At the end, I mentioned KEYZ having a sleepover in the weekend. Her grandmother started saying that absolutely not, KEYZ would not go. But to my surprise, stepmom stopped her. She said if KEYZ wanted, I could pick her up Saturday after soccer practice. I think we may have found an influence for the stepmother, if my theory is correct, of course. For dinner, that was that. When I was leaving, stepmom gave me a really tight hug. So many people were saying how she's just an evil stepmom that I kinda started to believe, but as I said in my first post, we always had a good relationship. I left very confused and emotional. Saturday afternoon, I picked up KEYZ. We watched Inside Out 2, then we ate shawarma for the first time, which is basically a meat burrito. I don't see the difference. It was so good to spend the day with her. I'm so glad to have her in my life. Sunday, I dropped her off and went inside to see my other siblings. Dad wasn't there. He was out meeting a work friend. Some people asked what my dad does. He's a lawyer, and stepmom used to work for an advertisement company, but is now a stay-at-home mom. We have another dinner scheduled for Friday. I don't know if I'll ever find out exactly why they wanted me to move, or why charge me rent. I don't want to touch the subject now, because I don't want to jeopardize my relationship with my siblings. So, I don't know if I'll have any more updates since things are settling down and is now just life. But if I find out in the future, I'll update. You guys have been incredible. Thanks so much for all the words of kindness and support you gave me. Talking it out and then reading your replies have helped immensely. I also took people's suggestions and do therapy. And this Friday will be my first session. Top/relevant comments. Redditor 2. I would have a private chat with your dad and stepmom to see what is actually going on without your step and half siblings being present. Just ask them point blank their behavior towards you. Make sure you record them on your phone while talking to them. Especially your stepmom's mom being very aggressive towards you. Where is all this coming from? What changed? Are they going to charge rent when your stepsister is old enough? Does she want you out of their lives? Just ask them these questions, especially your dad. Then, based on truth, tell them if you are not wanted in their lives. You're already staying away from them, mention the above. Then you'll go no contact with them and keep in touch with your stepsister because you both love each other. Tell your dad and stepmom to enjoy their new replacement family without you, I guess. Thank your dad, maybe your stepmom, that you remember what they have done for you over the years. Give your love and best wishes to them and say goodbye. OP responds, I understand where you're coming from, but that's the complete opposite of what I want. For starters, my younger siblings are babies. My baby sister is literally a month old. There's no way to have a relationship with them if I go no contact. Even my stepsister, which I would still have contact, she's still a teenager. Sure, I can call and text her, but we wouldn't be able to spend time together. I'm already out of the house, I have a home, a job, and am studying hard to have a career. Whatever reasons they kicked me out or needed money is not of my concern anymore. What I'm concerned is having a relationship with my siblings, seeing them grow up and being a part of their lives. I don't intend to rock the boat and possibly jeopardize this just to satisfy my curiosity. My dad and stepmom were being normal with me. Only your mom was being weird, but as long as that doesn't affect my relationship with my siblings, I couldn't care less. I'll gladly pretend nothing happened. I haven't forgiven them, but I can forget. So, real quick, it's always great to see Reddit still on their whole no contact fiasco. Gotta love that. You could literally have an 8-year-old color on your walls and you'd be like, hey, Reddit, what's the proper way to approach this and turn this into a learning lesson? And some fucker in the Reddit comments were like, yeah, your 8-year-old son is being abusive and negligent. You should go no contact with him. Also, you're the asshole for letting your 8-year-old draw on your walls. And while the 8-year-old might be a bit of an exaggeration, those kind of comments pop up fairly often on this channel. And it's something where I see Reddit's response, their weird armchair psychology approach and thought of, yeah, no contact, that's just the perfectly reasonable blanket approach for every situation. It makes me feel like I contributed something. I ranted at length about this before, but it's just every time I see it, I'm just reminded of the fact that Reddit just seems to have the propensity to jump straight towards no contact at the slightest amount of inconvenience. There's a time and a place, and this is not one of them. At least based upon the information that we have access to right now. Update 3. Grandpa is punishing my dad. Dad came clean about everything that happened and explained why he did what he did. Posted 12 days later on OP's page. So, things blew up a little, and I don't even know where to start. I still haven't processed everything I've been told. Since my last update, things have been normal from my side. I had another dinner with my parents the Friday before last. Stepmom's mom, who I'll call EB, meaning evil bitch, spoilers, was still giving me the dirty eye, but I ignored her. I had scheduled dinner with them for last Friday, and I was talking to them about taking my little brother to the park yesterday. But Wednesday, my dad called me, asked if I could instead postpone dinner and instead go to Grandpa's on Saturday, because he needed to talk with the whole family. Meanwhile, I had been talking to KEYZ, and she's been telling me stepmom, I'll call her Steph. That's not actually what it says, but it says STEH, and that's just gonna be hell for me to properly enunciate each time, so Steph it is! And Ebby have been fighting a lot. Well, last Sunday, Steph's father shows up. I'll call him Labby, meaning lying bastard. There's a big fight, and Labby and Ebby go back home on Monday. So, yesterday afternoon, I go to Grandpa's. My aunt was there as well. Then Dad and Steph arrive with KEYZ. Dad was clearly embarrassed. He apologized to me, to my grandparents. Steph apologizes to me as well. And Dad gave an explanation/apology/reason for everything that happened in the last few years. Some things I already knew, but KEYZ didn't. She was present for the whole thing. So, I'll try to tell everything here. I don't know how coherent I'll be, but I hope you can follow me. Years and years ago, Grandpa and a friend started a company. The company was very successful. When Dad was 25, Grandpa sold the company and made a lot of money. So he decided to gift each child a home. He gave his kids $350K each, with the promise they would use to buy homes or pay out the mortgages. Grandpa had seen people lose their homes and didn't want that to happen to his kids. Dad didn't buy a home, however. He actually moved to New York to start his own practice and become a big and successful lawyer. And as you can imagine, things didn't turn out so well for him. Half a decade later, he has no money left, can't pay rent, so he reaches out to Grandpa and moves back home. Grandpa helps him find a job with a buddy of his. After a while, Dad starts to put his life back together, rents a home, and moves out from Grandpa's, meets my mom, and starts dating her. They fall in love. After a while, he asks to marry her. Before they married, Grandpa came to them and said he would gift them a home. He had already talked with his other kids, and they were fine with it. But because he didn't trust Dad, and the home is so Dad's future kids would always have a roof over their heads, the home would stay in his name. In his will, they would go directly to Dad's kids. So I was actually mistaken before. My uncles and aunt don't live in homes owned by my grandpa. Only my dad does. And I think 2 cousins of mine as well. Next thing, I was born. Life is good for a while. Then Mom passes away. Dad struggles with taking care of me alone. That's when Grandpa starts to help financially. Few more years, Dad meets Steph. But Dad is embarrassed about not owning the house, and that Grandpa is helping him. So he never tells Steph any of this. For her, Dad was just a moderately successful lawyer. They marry, she becomes pregnant, she asks if she could become a full-time stay-at-home mom, and Dad is embarrassed to say no. So he tells her it's fine. In the meanwhile, now with 3 kids plus a stay-at-home wife, Dad is struggling even more, Grandpa is helping more, and Dad's savings are being diminished day by day. Dad admits that he kinda threw Steph under the bus to Grandpa, blaming her for his financial problems to Grandpa. So Grandpa would continue helping for the sake of the kids. Now, I need to go back a little and talk about Labby and Ebby. Just as Steph, they think Dad is a rich, successful lawyer, and they start saying to Dad how he's spoiling me, how I'm gonna be irresponsible with money, how I have an easy life, that when Labby was my age, he had to pay rent to his dad, and he did the same with his son, Steph's brother, and how successful they became, never needing anything from anybody, bootstraps, etc., etc., etc. And apparently, that got into Dad's head. He became afraid I would be dependent on him, or more likely Grandpa, and his money, instead of being successful on my own. He became afraid I would be a failure, like him, that still needs his dad to bail him out. So he started getting parenting advice from his in-laws. Okay, so I was a little off the mark, but I was pretty close. Why not ask his own dad, who's much, much more successful and raised 3/4 of his kids to be as successful as well? I asked. And apparently, it's because he felt embarrassed. That comes up again and again and again to explain Dad's actions. Embarrassment. He didn't want Grandpa to think even less of him. Therefore, the rent idea, which was a suggestion from Labby. Dad says his initial plan was to save the money and give it to me later. But with the new kid, Steph not working, and trying to project to Steph and his in-laws how fine things were, saving the money became impossible, according to him. By the way, he also lied to me here at the time, saying it's a normal thing to do, that Grandpa had done it to him and his kids, which is a lie I discovered 8 months ago. But with everything else that happened, that seemed small at the time. There is a detail that I didn't disclose in my previous post because it didn't matter, or so I thought. And that is, I'm part of the LGBTQIA+ community. I don't hide this fact. In fact, I was already out to my mom before her passing. But it's not something I advertise either. That'll become relevant later. Anyways, continuing. Labby becomes Dad's confidant, and he starts to open himself up to him about his money troubles. And Labby starts to say things like, I should move out, and things like that to Dad, which is rejected initially. Then Steph becomes pregnant again, and Dad panics. That's when Labby and Abby come to Dad, and say they would help him, not only financially, but Abby would move in with him, and Steph after the baby to help out, and even convince Steph to go back to work, since Abby would be there taking care of the kids. But for that, I needed to move out. The reason is because the home wouldn't be able to accommodate Abby, and that it was time I left the nest, etc., etc., etc. So, they convinced Dad I needed to move out. Dad didn't tell Steph any of this, keep in mind, only that he thought it was the best for me, and the baby coming was just a great opportunity. According to them, Steph was against this, but Dad pulled the "my daughter, I know best" card. So she deferred to him. They tell me I needed to move out. I talked about this from my point of view. That day, Grandpa goes to my dad's home and they have a huge fight. Not only Dad and Grandpa, but Dad and Steph. Because it was then she discovered Dad didn't own the house. Dad had almost no savings and Dad was dependent on Grandpa. Dad's deal with her parents was still a secret. At this point, I asked Steph why then she acted so hostile towards me after that day. So much that made me unwelcomed and wanting to move out. And she looked shocked. She apologized to me and started to cry, saying that she was never mad at me but at Dad. That she had no idea she was to blame for me moving out. I was crying as well. I said it's not her fault. And guys, I know many of you have said bad things about her, and I don't blame you, but I do believe her. The look on her face when I said I felt unwelcomed, and that's why I moved out, it's not something you can fake. Now I'm thinking she's as much of a victim of my dad's actions as me, and all this time, she was just trying to give me space. So, going back to events. I moved out. Grandpa not only cuts Dad from all financial support, but starts to charge him money for the house. The only thing he continued paying for is KEYZ's education. Now, everything is in the open, and Dad and Steph have to cut everything. Dinners, expensive foods, sell her car, etc. Labby and Abby give them some money as well to help out. Poor Steph is stressed out, pregnant with a lying husband. I'm actually sad for her and what she went through. I was looking at Grandpa, and I could see he was as well. I don't think he realized the amount of stress he was placing on her. I don't know how he will proceed from now on regarding Dad in the house. Before the baby is born, Abby moves in with Dad and Steph. Steph gives birth. Things are normal. But with the new baby, Dad feels even more guilty over what happened, and that's when he calls me. Again, this part I already told you, jumping to when I went to dinner the first time. Dad and Steph also recognized Abby acting strange towards me. After I left, they talked. Nothing came from it. But Steph kept talking to Dad about her mom, and Dad started to tell her his conversations with Abby and Labby about money and raising kids, etc. After my second dinner, Steph confronted her mom, and they had a huge fight, And apparently, that's when she said something in the lines of, "I can't believe you're letting that slur back into your home after getting rid of her." And that's when the coin dropped for Dad, and he realized how much of a fool he has been. They kicked Abby out, Labby came to pick her up, and they had another fight. Dad actually wanted to act as nothing had happened, continue with me visiting and rebuilding the relationship, but Steph put her foot down and said he needed to come clean about everything, not only to me, but Cassie, and everyone as well. And so we come to the present. I was crying, Steph was crying, Cassie was crying, Dad was crying, Aunt was crying, Grandpa was crying, Grandma, who hadn't said a single word, was holding me tight. According to Dad, that's all. No more lies, no more deception. Dad and Steph left after that. I slept at Grandma's because I was in no state to drive. Came home this morning, took a fucking long shower, cried a lot, and now I'm typing this out to see if it helps me make sense of all of this. Make sense of my thoughts and feelings. I guess that's the end of the story. I don't know what I'm gonna do now. I feel sad, angry, sorry for Steph and Cassie. I feel everything and nothing. I'll be calling my therapist tomorrow to see if we can book more sessions. I've been going every other Friday, but I can't wait a whole week. On the bright side, whoever had bet evil step-grandmother won. There is still one more update after this, so get your mouse off that X button. OP's comments. OP, in response to a comment suggesting family therapy. Yesterday, the more I thought, the more afraid of what became of my dad's marriage to stepmom. She's been through a lot as well in the last months and has 2 small children. I'll suggest to her therapy as well, family and individual. I also realize now that she doesn't have her mom's help with the baby anymore. Things may be even harder for her. I'll talk to her and offer whatever help I can. OP, in response to a comment suggesting that Abby hates her for being LGBT. That's what Dad and Stepmom have said. He said he realized she was a bigot and trying to push me away. I never had much interaction with them. When my parents were visiting them, I usually stayed with my grandparents, so I don't know if that was like the last straw for him and if they had said other things to him in the past. He never showed any signs he didn't support me, and neither have Stepmom. That's why it never crossed my mind it had something to do with it. Final update. Posted more than 1 year later on OP's page. Hi everyone, I was recently thinking of this post and decided to give an update. I wish I could have made this on the r/true off my chest, but alas, I can't. First, I'm in a much better place emotionally, as last year I was a complete wreck. I'm doing very well for the most part. For those who don't remember or do not want to read my previous post, the summary is, my father forced me to move out, Grandpa was mad at him and cut him off his financial assistance that no one knew about, including my stepmom. Stepmom's parents manipulated my father into kicking me out because I'm trans in exchange for their financial support. Now, after everything hit the fan that day, life went back to normal, more or less. We started family therapy for a while. It started promising, with Dad being willing and open, but after a while, he regressed and became less willing to put on the work until he stopped going. Me, Cassie, and Stepmom continued going for a while, but stopped as well. I continue with individual therapy, and my psychiatrist wants to make an evaluation for ADHD, but wants to wait until I'm fully emotionally and psychologically stable. Stepmom and Cassie continue individual therapy as well. As I imagined most could guess, Stepmom and Dad ended up separating after a few months. At first, it was temporary, but now there's no going back. Divorce is not finalized yet, however. Stepmom stayed on the house as Grandpa would not accept anything else. I started going there to help Stepmom with the baby and my little brother more and more, until I was spending almost all my time there. So me and Stepmom decided I would move back. I thought Grandpa would be disappointed as he was very proud of how well I was doing on my own, but he looked happy when I told him. But he said he'll keep that unit a little longer out of the market if I ever need it. I continued going to uni, but took only a half load of classes this year. But now I'm back to a full schedule. Fluid mechanics is a pain. Home life has become pretty good. Me and Stepmom became really close this last year. She went back to work while I left mine to help with the kids. And I truly prefer this as taking care of my siblings is much more enjoyable. But also, Grandpa insisted on paying me to babysit. But next year, I'll start interning on a construction company from my grandpa's friend. I know many people insisted my stepmom knew everything, or was somewhat complacent with dad's actions. But I truly, truly believe and trust her. She's being almost no contact with her parents, and they're forbidden to visit. See, this is an example of when no contact is good. Cassie also stepped in and is helping a lot around the house, and Grandpa also insists on paying her for her time. We know this is his way of helping us without making it sound too much like charity. My baby sister is a little devil, running all around the house. The little Lucifer, or Lucy as I call her, that's not her name, but I do actually call her Lucy sometimes, didn't even learn to crawl properly. She just went directly to walking. We need to keep constant vigilance because it seems her head has a magnetic pull towards sharp corners. My little brother was the one hit the hardest by Dad moving out. I know these posts have painted a terrible picture of my father, and I'm not excusing anything he did. But he was a good dad otherwise, and my little brother was very attached to him. Me and my father barely speak nowadays. He acts like we should all forget everything and move on, which I still cannot do. There's no formal custody agreement between him and stepmom, but he picks my brother twice or thrice a month to spend the day or weekends, and now that my sister is older, hers sometimes too. Overall, I'm in a much, much better place than I was last year. I have an incredible family, amazing grandparents, loving siblings, and my stepmom has become a really close friend. I even got a girlfriend. I also know I'm extremely privileged to have a supportive family and system. In no moment in all of this have I ever had to worry about having a roof over my head or food on the table, which unfortunately is not everyone's experiences in similar situations, as I've been told, sometimes harshly, over private messages. Lastly, I'd like to thank everyone who read or commented something. The support on my first post was the push I needed to stop being naive and ignoring things. Posting here was a great way to help me figure out my thoughts and feelings, but I probably won't do any more updates, as I consider this chapter of my life closed now. The father literally Walter Whited himself. He let his pride get the best of him and decided to make deals and choices that destroyed the people that were closest to him, rather than actually just accept some help and admit that he's in a rough position. OP and OP's father are in the extremely rare and fortunate position to have a stable support network around them, but out of his own pride, he refused to even acknowledge that and opted for instead making a deal with the devils. Pride is a hell of a drug, good God. I mean, I get it. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I had to ask for help with something that was incredibly difficult to ask for help for, and embarrassing to do so, and I had to swallow a lot of my pride and ask for help. I had people in my life pushing me to just simply try asking for help, and I did, and it saved me. We're actually a few months away from the 2-year anniversary of that, and that's kind of an extremely crazy thought if I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, speaking from experience, sometimes one of the strongest things you can do is swallow your pride, as hard as that can be. I'm also realizing the Vault channel is growing in a way where some people probably have no idea about the past couple years of my time on this platform and all that's happened. So it's actually kind of a relief that with time, I won't be known for that anymore, and that label will soon be gone. Take care, everyone.
Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.